Welcome to America Under Trump on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidel. This episode is called The Executive, Judiciary, Judicial, and Legislative Branches in America, Discord, Disdain, and Dysfunction. Our guest for the show is Dr. Roopmati Khandekar, geopolitical analyst. Welcome to the show, Roopmati.
Aloha, Jay. Thank you for having me on your show. Such a good pleasure here.
It's really time for us to talk about the erosion of constitutional limitations under Trump, and the erosion of the country as a result, and our democracy. We need to follow it closely and connect the dots to document this extraordinary decline of our democracy, which is happening right in front of us. Can you talk about the most recent things that demonstrate this decline?
Jay, so now we are in a constitutional democracy, and which works on the system of checks and balances, so that it thwarts the excessive concentration of power in any one branch when you see that they are, motivated or indulging in getting that. But since the second term of Trump, we're seeing a whole new different ball game, Jay. In 2025, Trump has signed 166 executive orders, EO 14147 up to EO 141312. These are the executive orders that have been signed, Jay. And the American system was always designed to create a presidency strong enough to execute the law, to lead foreign policy and national defense, but at the same time never cross constitutional limits. So that was the aim that we strive for. But Jay, we have the three branches, executive with the president, the legislature, and the judiciary. So we'll discuss it in a three-pronged way so that we get to know exactly what is happening now. So, Jay, the Congress or the legislature regularly hands the president issues that they feel they don't need to resolve legislatively because they're politically very difficult and the president is competent enough to take action in this. So this Congress has handed the president more than 120 grants of emergency powers, Jay. And that has given him such a broad discretionary zone to work on. So, like President Trump is citing one of the measures known as International Economic Emergency Powers Act, the IEEPA, to justify his global and country-specific tariffs, Jay. And never has the bureaucratic language mentioned the term as tariffs. He's included it himself. And another open-ended power that the legislature has handed him is the illegal immigration on invasion under the Aliens Enemies Act of 1798 to justify his deportation policies, Jay. So just imagine to justify his aggressive deportation policy, 1798 Act he is invoked. So all this is really well thought about, and he has got this discretionary zone in which he works in. So Madison had argued in Federalist, Jay, that the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, justifies what is known as tyranny.
Yeah, talk about Tim Snyder. Tim Snyder is worried that the prison in the Everglades is going to turn into a prison camp a la the 1930s, and people will be taken there and you won't know they're there, and they'll be used for labor, for slave labor. That's his most recent thing. But, I think it's very important what you're saying, and I think all this is driven by Trump's need for power, his determination for power. He didn't discover that in full in his first term, but he certainly is playing that card now. And he's doing everything he can to enhance his own power and diminish the powers of the other branches of government, all in violation of the constitutional structure. And he's pathological, so that every time he scores one and gets more powerful, it emboldens him to score another one and get more powerful. And this mechanism of the executive orders is the perfect mechanism for him, because he just writes them up, he signs them with his fancy pen, and presto, there's another violation of the Constitution. And it's like he's saying to us, what are you going to do about it? And the test is on the other branches and the people. But so far, he's been winning that test pretty much every time, with certain exceptions. And what troubles me is that the country is standing by while all of this happens, and it is watching the decline of the democracy. And there's no institution, no guardrail that has actually stood in his way, except for one, and that's the judiciary, which has issued a number of decisions against him. So let's break it down branch by branch. Let's talk first about Congress.
Yeah.
Congress has been neutered. It has been completely neutralized, and we saw that in the big, beautiful bill, which is really a euphemism. And we saw that they have confirmed his appointment, Trump's appointment, of the most awful members of his cabinet, people who are clearly unqualified and who are chosen only on loyalty for him. And so the result is the cabinet is not in any way distinguishable from him. They do whatever he says, and everything that comes from the government, therefore, is really coming from him. So when the government speaks to you, it's him. He's speaking to you. So he will continue to control Congress. It's very clear. We have crossed the Rubicon with the passage of that big, beautiful bill. And now here's the problem. He's at war with the country. He's at war with Canada, Mexico, and the Panama Canal. He's at war with Greenland. He's at war with the EU. He's at war with Ukraine. I mean, there's everything he does is at war with somebody. He's at war with Asia. He has no friends. He has no allies anymore, except people who he's somehow corrupted. So I'm asking you, this is a hard one, Roopmati. We might as well begin with a hard question. Why? Why is Trump at war with everybody? Everything he is doing is destructive. Why is he doing that?
Sheer power handed over to him by the mandate that he got. 312 seats and a sweeping majority in the legislature has given him this. He came up with this. It's kindergarten language. A big beautiful bill, and it got passed. It got passed in the Congress, where you have learned men. It would be the Whigs in Great Britain, where they would think, intellectuals who would question, who would have the ability to stop. And nothing of that sort has happened. So the big, beautiful bill is a massive package of tax and federal spending cuts. What are they cuts for? Why they are being cut? They have to question this all the time. And Jay, it's the first big legislative win of his second term. And it's going to unlock tax cuts. It's going to have funding boosts for national security, partly paid by the largest cut to federal safety net. And Jay, only 2 Republicans voted no. It was Republican Brian Fitzpatrick and Republican Thomas Massey. Okay. Now you have the Democratic minority leader who was Hakeem Jeffries, who spoke for 8 hours straight. If you're speaking for 8 hours, it has to make sense. It has to have an impact. It can't be hollow politics. He was given a standing ovation by the Democrats. So we are seeing something of a legislative process which has got no impact, no cutting, no nothing. It's just what do you say? It was a formality done. It has to have impact, Jay, to give the voice of the people to on the table is the duty of the legislature. And by seeing this system, we are really forced to question whether we have the rights of the legislature in place properly according to the Constitution. Are they just going to sit over there and watch the president sign the bills that he puts in, that without any cuts, without any amendments? It has to have a method, Jay. Third world countries have a method like this, where a small parliament will get up and question. There'll be a question hour. The legislators are responsible representatives of the people, and they will question the laws that are happening, And that is a thriving democracy. Today we are living in a dead democracy. Nothing is happening. It's just what Trump wants will be happening.
Well, the legislature is sort of neutralized, as I mentioned, and some people say they're castrated because they follow only him, do everything that he wants. And we have had proof of that in a very dramatic way in the big, beautiful bill. It's a bad bill. It's a terrible bill. And, it had no open air at all. And the legislators were afraid to talk to their constituents about it because their constituents would have yelled at them. And if they go back now after Congress recesses, they will find their constituents are trying to yell at them some more, much more, because their constituents are being hurt. The New York Times had an article yesterday about all the ways that every citizen in the country will be hurt by this bill, but it passed. And trust me, Trump will sign it immediately if he hasn't signed it already. So what you have is a Congress that is useless, a Congress that has not been a guardrail on him at all, a Congress that has not done the right thing while he dismantled the government in front of their eyes. It's very iconic, Roopmati, that the former headquarters building for USAID is being converted to the headquarters for the FBI. And it's sort of symbolic. It's iconic that we don't care about helping people. We don't care about continuing our USAID projects, but instead we hand it over to the police, the national police, the FBI. So we are turning into, may I say, a police state. That's what's happening. And that enhances his power. But I want to ask you a question about the legislature. Everybody says that at the midterms, the people will rise up. Have I heard that once? I've heard it 100 times. The people rise up and vote the bums out of office. Will they? Will they vote the bums out of office, or will something else happen? For example, will people be stupid enough to vote for them again because they are Trumpers and MAGAs and GOP? Will Trump somehow undermine the Congress or undermine the government in general with another, quote, emergency, end quote, justification? So there are no elections in 2026. Can we rely on the vote at the midterms, or is that just pie in the sky?
Pie in the sky. because it's too late to overturn any of the powers that he's got. And you see the awakening or the enlightenment amongst the public is very late to reach them. It takes a long time for them to understand exactly what is going on in politics and what is the truth. If he has got tariff money, the money is for a short term. The money may cause inflation. They will look at it as a boost to the American economy. They will not look at what happens when the trade will reduce with that country. Imports will reduce. All these things they have a they have a effect which is consequential of every decision, and that the public never understands. So all decisions that are made by voting, especially made by the few who turn up at the polling booths, is very superficial, on the spot, and it's something like that can be influenced with two MAGA people coming up to you, catching your let's go and have Trump has done this, Trump has, oh, okay, fine, let's vote for Trump. So they don't have a mind of their own. The public, very disappointed in the public in the kind of the mandate that they show each and every election, and without thinking, Jay. So you and the president is a showman. This one. So visually, whoever is standing in election has the rival as Trump. So you're just thinking whether to vote for Trump or the other one. Trump or the other one. There is no other character which has filled up that space which Trump has really occupied.
Yeah. Well, we were talking before the show about the Philippines. One of the big problems in the Philippines is something like 25% of the people in the Philippines, mostly in rural areas, but some in the metropolitan areas too, don't go to school. There are no schools for them. They don't attend school. They don't learn. And of course, this results in inadequate government, bad policies, people voting for a shiny object rather than a good candidate, and ultimately corruption. And this has held the Philippines back for a long time. And this is one of the reasons I think that Trump is opposed to education. He calls them intellectuals. He does. He calls them that name. And then, of course, he's trying to dismantle the Department of Education. He is dismantling the Department of Education. He's dismantling books in the schools, Bibles being read in the schools, and all these dumbed down things that the federal government, believe it or not, is doing. So he achieves a certain amount of ignorance around the country. And it's that ignorance that votes. The other thing is he's suppressing votes. There are bills in his Congress that would suppress votes, that would require people to turn in all kinds of papers in order to qualify to vote, that would stop, voting by mailbox voting. There's all kinds of issues like that, and that he's trying to get the Congress to suppress voting, and it'll work along demographic and racial lines. So he's trying to control the result. Congress is working with him because Congress is largely racist too, is working with him to suppress the vote. So he's trying to have anything but a free and fair election. And finally, with his emergency powers, he might just delay the election indefinitely. Once he delays it, even for one day, it's off the chart. The schedule set forth in the Constitution and all the laws that relate to voting, federal laws, are off the side. And when are you going to bring it back? If it's delayed even a little bit, when are you going to bring it back? Maybe never. Maybe we never have the midterms. Okay? And finally, once the election is done, just as before, there's a real possibility he would claim that there was fraud and it isn't a valid election. He only wants the result if it favors him and his friends. So, I don't think he respects the democratic process at all, and neither do the MAGAs and the GOP, for that matter, respect the democratic process and the notion of free and fair voting. So I agree with you. I don't think we're going to have a free and fair election one way or the other in the midterms. And that means, doesn't it? That means that Congress is unchanged. That is, no new candidates can be elected. And the guys who are in there now would stay in there.
Yes.
Short of resignation or incapacity, they would stay in there. And if they stayed in there on an indefinite basis, what happens? The same result. Congress remains neutralized. Am I right?
Yeah, Jay. See, the Congress has power to override a veto of the president with 2/3 majority. So, if it was that kind of activism in the Congress, you could have done something about Trump. But they are just flock of sheep. They're following the shepherd, nothing else other than that. Because the president, with his 15 departments, Jay, and his cabinet heading each one of them, is literally managing the country single-handedly, and the check of the legislature is completely absent in this second term of Congress that we see. In the first one, at least there was fights, there were arguments which Trump had to go through. This time it's cruising.
So we've covered Trump, and you mentioned all the executive orders, thousands of them. And so many of them are illegal and unconstitutional. The courts up to this point have ruled that way, although some judges more, some judges less. And, we cannot rely on Congress to do the right thing. They have been compromised. So that's two branches that favor whatever Trump wants to do on a given morning. Now, let's talk about the last guardrail of the three branches. That is the federal judiciary. How are we doing on the federal judiciary, Roopmati? Can we rely on them anymore?
The executive order 14160 changed it all up, Jay, and belief in the system just got a little bit low, expectations thrashed. Uh, this order was signed on Inauguration Day by Trump, and it was to end the birthright citizenship for children born in the US if the children are illegal migrants or they're on temporary visas. So, Jay, this is in conflict directly with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that says that all persons born or neutralized in the US and subject to the jurisdiction are citizens of the US and of the state that they're born into. So, Trump's executive order set limits to that constitutional principle. And what followed was that district courts started issuing universal injunctions for this against this executive order of the president, Jay. And the Trump versus Casa case that you spoke about, Jay, uh, said the Supreme Court said that the district courts did not have the power to issue this wide-ranging injunctions which limit the power of the president. Now, this changed everything. That the judiciary cannot limit the president. Now, this injunction was one thing, but this will be applied to everything that he does. And this was on June 27th, Jay. And so in the USJ, there are 9 Supreme Court judges, and 6 of them are liberal. 3 of them were selected by Trump in his first term, and 3 are liberal. And all this has happened in favor of Trump. So, what do we say about this, Jay? Where is the check of the judiciary?
Well, this Supreme Court really has gone over the side. It even began before Trump when they issued their decision in Citizens United about campaign funding, calling corporations the same as individuals, allowing for the development of secret election funding organizations. You knew there was a problem. I saw that case. I said, oh boy, this is going to have a huge effect on the country on elections. Give it a few years, and it has had a huge effect on the elections. And it has allowed the Republicans to get much more power in Congress. That was a Supreme Court decision. Bad, terrible, bad decision. Then you have Trump versus Anderson, which allowed, and this was a unanimous decision. I was very disappointed with the liberal members of the court that said that even though the 14th Amendment says if you engage in an insurrection, you can't run as a public official for a public official job. And they found some weird logic. I mean, if you read the actual English in the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, Trump was disqualified around the country, everywhere, by the language in the 14th Amendment. And yet, and the Colorado case found just that. And yet, the Supreme Court said, no, we have some arcane language, arcane analysis here, and we're going to turn the Colorado case over, turn it upside down, and we are going to let Trump be on the ballot all over the country. And that was also a critical case. What is remarkable about it is the language of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, is as clear as a bell. There's no two ways to interpret it. And yet they found a way to support Trump's nomination. Dobbs, of course. Dobbs was also a shockaroo, turning over Roe v. Wade. And you could see then that they were going to invent law from the extreme right-hand side of the equation, and they did. Trump versus U.S., creating this phony baloney immunity for him. Where did they get that from? Constitutional scholars are still shaking their head how the Supreme Court did that. One case after another. A variety of civil liberty cases and immigration cases and deportation cases, most recently saying that if Trump wanted to send deportees to, oh gosh, where is it? I think it was in Africa, the Sudan or the Congo, he could do that. Isn't that cruel and unusual punishment to El Salvador? Isn't that cruel and unusual punishment knowing they're going to be in a jail that is as dangerous as you can get, and they are probably going to die there? and they haven't had the benefit of habeas corpus or due process, and boy, it's scary. It really sounds like sending people to deportation camps, like in the 30s in Europe, where they died. They were intended to die, and they died. And then, as you mentioned, the Trump versus Casa, that's a real shockaroo, because that knocks off the federal judiciary. Now you can say, well, there are exceptions and exemptions, but it's really not a realistic. There are no other options that would work in time. At best, they're slow, and at worst, they won't work at all. One is the class action rule, Rule 23 in the federal rules of civil procedure, and I'm not sure that's a useful avenue. Another is that states could file actions, but I'm not sure that's going to work in the Supreme Court. The court did not address that reality, that possibility. And I suppose, there are other possibilities legally, but the Supreme Court was not really endorsing any of them. And Thomas and Gorsuch made it clear that they were suspicious of any alternative to avoid the holding in the Casa case. So for all practical purposes, the Supreme Court has neutralized the federal judiciary, the judges that would rule against Trump. We're going to see more about that. There'll be litigation about it, and there'll be hopefully a lot of media about it, but it's not a good decision. So we have here, and I wanted a question about this. We have here a court with Roberts, Thomas, Gorsuch, Alito, Kavanaugh, Barrett. Barrett wrote the opinion, by the way, at Casa. And they are extreme conservatives. They are, ideologues or worse. And they are always going to vote in favor of Trump and his worst inclinations, his worst executive orders. That's what we got. And the three liberal judges, Kagan, Sotomayor, Jackson, they're going to stamp their feet and write up how dismayed and disgruntled and disappointed they are. But there's not too much they can do about it. So the MAGAs are in charge with a fixed majority of 6 judges out of 9. Even if there was only 5 judges out of 9, and that would still be a majority of MAGA judges. So here's my question to you. Is there hope for the Supreme Court? And I would add, remember that the president appoints the members of the nominees for the Supreme Court, and the Senate has to confirm them. So going forward, people say, well, we can reform the Supreme Court, change the number of judges, but you can't do that without Congress. And you and I have already talked about Congress and how it is neutralized and likely to stay that way. And also that if Trump appoints, if one of these extreme right judges, one of these conservative judges dies or becomes unable to serve, he has the opportunity to appoint another one. He's the president. Yes. He's going to appoint somebody as bad or worse to retain the conservative majority. And what is Congress going to do? What is the Senate going to do? What's going to happen? Do we have a possibility of change here, Roopmati?
We started with the system of checks and balances, Jay. It's just that Trump is monitoring the other systems. Nothing is checking him at all. So he's got complete monopoly over every decision that he makes. He's got public opinion, which is not united enough to form a formidable opposition to him. He's got his own party, which says, yes, men. They will never go against him, 2 people opposing the entire big, beautiful bill was 2 less, don't you feel that? No real debate. And judges, you are the legal expert, Jay, and you know about it, that every legal opinion matters. It makes lives better, or it changes the course of things that happen. So, and plus, every decision, every sentence that you speak in your legal field has to have a weightage given or reasoning given behind it. Here we have taken it as a given that judge is MAGA and he's going to vote for Trump. That judge is conservative and he's going to go for Trump. That judge is liberal and he doesn't have a standing in the entire setup. So there is no question of the logic of legal, what do you say, opinion and nothing, Jay. Nothing. Literally, we are stuck with nothing from this entire two branches on the executive, that is the president.
So what happens if one of the conservative judges dies or is unable to serve? Trump would appoint another one, maybe worse, and the Senate would confirm that person in minutes, the existing Senate. They have confirmed some of the worst cabinet members imaginable, unbelievably bad. And so they're going to do the same thing for any Supreme Court judge, or for that matter, let me add, it's not just the Supreme Court, it's the entire federal judiciary.
Yes.
Judges are appointed for life in the federal judiciary, but it depends on how long they live. It depends on, whether they're able to serve. And so you have hundreds, thousands of federal judges around the country, and he has the power to appoint their successors, right? So it's not just the Supreme Court, it's the whole federal judiciary. And he is going to appoint loyalists. And the Senate right now, and the way it's constituted, is going to confirm those loyalists instantly. I mean, Billy Long, the recently confirmed director of the Internal Revenue Service, real big questions about whether he's qualified. But they after a while, after some kind of issue about it, the Senate confirmed him, no problem. I think the federal judiciary is really on the ropes here, not likely to be any better than it is now. And when you add this other possibility that we discussed, if the midterm elections don't result in a change in the configuration of the House and the Senate, if it doesn't flip either one of them, it's going to be worse, especially the Senate. It means that if the Senate remains MAGA and supporting him, which is clear that they do, he'll be able to get these people in. If the midterm elections are delayed, deferred, unseated somehow, upended somehow, or manipulated somehow, the Senate will remain the same. That's what he wants. He'll work for that. And the Senate will work for that by its legislation. And so, assuming that it stays the same, the situation I just described will stay the same. Trump appoints conservative judges, and they stay. And they're confirmed, and they stay. The other thing is, well, God, Trump is at war. Trump is manipulating the Congress and manipulating the courts. What about Trump himself? There are things that he's done. One reporter for the Times identified, about a dozen things that Trump has done that would be, should be, could be treated as impeachable. Do you think there's any chance that the Congress would impeach him? They need some pretty heavy votes on both the House and the Senate to actually remove him from office. Would they impeach him?
They are incompetent to do that, Jay. They are incompetent to stand up to him, because you've seen the handshake of Trump. He pulls you towards him and then he shakes you and jolts you till you lose control, and then he takes over control. He is very aggressive in his policy, and that's the way he goes about life. We had spoken about his mentor, Rob, and he taught him this, that you can't accept defeat. The front person, you are supposed to be the victor all the time. So that kind of aggressiveness comes onto him, and he looks down upon everybody else. Like recently, he was asked a question about the New York mayoral candidate, Hamdani, that he will not let ICE come down on immigrants. He said, okay, then we'll have to arrest him. So the constitutional electoral process doesn't matter to him at all. It's what he wants done will be done. It's one straight line, Jay. And for that, if he has to trample on the legislature, it's okay. If he has to manipulate the judiciary, that's okay. And his cabinet we don't have it started off that these would be young leaders of the future, and today we see them relegated to just filling the chairs around him when a world leader arrives. So none of them have come out as personality that we can look onto or bank the US future on. None of them have come up with that charisma. None of them have come up with those policies. Marco Rubio is, missing in action. Vance is not that kind of a dynamic person. So you have him hogging the entire limelight to his own. And he feeds his own ego. So he doesn't need anybody else to do that for him. He's a kind of a person who will stand in front of the mirror and say, "You're the best, and you're the best." That's it. The world doesn't matter to him.
Well, you touch on an interesting point, and that a lot of people have said that Trump is A, getting demented, and B, he's not his thinking isn't sound. He's not just age; he's got some kind of mental handicap, and of course he would deny that. But that leads to a problem with the 25th Amendment, which would theoretically allow his cabinet to remove him for mental disability, any disability. Do you think his cabinet would ever remove him?
Spineless that too, Jay. Spineless that too. Today we are sitting in a monarchy. In the democracy of America, we are sitting in the monarchy of King Trump. And that's it that you can describe this entire situation in. Because not only they do not oppose his decisions, whatever decisions he makes, they follow up on that. Like if Marco Rubio is sent to Saudi Arabia for a peace talk between Ukraine and Russia, he goes there. 8 hours, 13 hours of negotiation, he goes for it. But he doesn't have the voice to say that it should be held over in Russia itself, something like that. Concrete stuff is not coming out of this cabinet. And if you look at it, you're really looking or searching for leaders of tomorrow, and we don't have that in the bracket. And that is more concerning than what Trump is doing now. Do we have anybody who can rectify what is happening to the constitutional democracy today, that we can sort it out tomorrow? So we don't have a good leader of opposition. We don't have a good Republican leader who can succeed. So, America heading towards what is the main question, Jay? If we had a Democrat who was dynamic, came up with better policies, the public would have gotten attracted to that kind of a thing. But nothing. It's very monotonous on the other side of Trump.
Yeah, well, I'm getting more and more concerned as we go down the pike on these issues. So, we're kind of running out of time in the sense that, Trump is getting more aggressive in his
Yes.
executive orders. He's more aggressive in his war against the people, not only the immigrants and the migrants, but the people in general. Against the states, against state officials. He's getting more aggressive. I'm not even talking about his aggression against other countries and allies, just domestically. And he's getting more controlling over the other branches of government. So it's a unitary presidency. And I guess the question I would put to you is this it? Have we come to the end of our democracy now? Can this be restored? We know that 3 out of the 3 branches are no longer consider themselves obligated or bound by the Constitution. Is that here to stay? Will Trump's successor, whether it's Vance or somebody else, probably Vance, I'm afraid, will they be able to get back to where we were, or is this a permanent change of circumstance?
Jay, if Vance is training under the wings of Trump and he's as eccentric as him, it'll be a continuation. If if we wait it out and have a democratic change of government, that would be a whole new ball game after that. But if Republicans continue with the same administration, this would continue because the mandate has to continue. Otherwise, if the legislature they get good seats and they go 2/3 majority, it would change a lot of things for the executive orders. But to reverse executive orders, Jay, it takes a very, very long time because Trump put whatever his mistakes as it was done by Biden. So now we have to reverse all the mess that he made to come down to a status quo and from there go on to progress. So that is a different trajectory that has to be taken, Jay. Otherwise, if he had gone straight on good policies, it would have been progress multiplied by progress and he would have gone higher. But right now, it has to be sorted out and then built up.
Oh, you're so right about that. Roopmati, I compliment you on a very profound concluding point here. You just take it branch by branch. To reverse all those executive orders would take a lot. You'd have to sit there and write, many, many, many thousands of orders to reverse what Trump has done. That's one thing. Congress would have to pick up sticks. Let's assume the Congress was all Democrat or anti-MAGA, anti-GOP. It would take them virtually years to repeal and pass legislation that would bring us back, that would make us a democracy again, that would handle all the crazy things that you have to recreate the agencies like USAID that have been destroyed or manipulated or undermined in some way. He can criticize Elon Musk, but Elon Musk really did a huge service for Trump. He destroyed a good part of the government. And to restore that, to recreate that, would take a long time and a lot of effort. And finally, the courts. The courts enter these opinions, especially the Supreme Court, and maybe some of the other judges too. They make mistakes. So you have to wait for another case to come up and ask them to change what they did, case by case, Supreme Court, case by case. This would take a long time. We'd have to recreate the judicial imprimatur of the judicial decisions that have been entered by so many courts and so many cases to correct what has happened under Trump. Wow, this is a process with all three branches of government that would take years and years. Do you agree?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Because in any case which we have to, which there is proceedings going up against, you pick up a landmark case and say it was this case versus this. Now this Trump versus Casa is going to go on everywhere. Every case that he has gone is going to be the landmark case in every proceeding. References, and what do you call it? Jay, back and forth is going to take a lot of time, going to eat up a lot of time. And by that time, you're going to have the dragon breathing down your neck. You're going to have India, Japan, Germany, all of them are progressing economies. They are waiting to, they're not stopping. But we are at a lull in America. This is a lull in economic affairs, or otherwise, it's upward with a very big downward coming up next. So that's the kind of balance that we are in. It is not very, very calculated, and it's impulsive, reactive.
Well, you touch on the international, and it's really the same kind of phenomenon on the international side. We haven't covered that in this particular talk show, but he's messed up a lot of relations. He's screwed up foreign policy to a fairly well. How do you recreate damaged foreign policy, damaged foreign relations, where he's alienated our allies? How do you fix that? Who does that? How long does it take? It's another monumental chore that a successor government would have to undertake. Wow. Well, I don't feel better at all. From the time we started this show until now, I do not feel better. So I think it's time to leave it there. Thank you so much to our guest, Dr. Roopmati Khandekar, political and geopolitical analyst. I'm Jay Fidel, host of America Under Trump, in this episode, which we are calling The Executive, Judicial, and Legislative Branches and How They Have Been Affected and Undermined in the Trump Administration. Thanks to our viewers for watching. We'll see you again soon for the next one. Aloha. Aloha, Roopmati.
Hello, Ajay. Thank you so very much.